And remember that the source is not just in these ancient wisdom books. A spark of wisdom is inside of ourselves. Only one book is worth reading: the heart.
Action!
Philosophy means love of wisdom, connecting to this heartfelt essence of human knowledge, going with that curiosity and openness, with that love into the human wisdom traditions, exploring the depth of human understanding, the understanding by the humans, not just about the humans, but about life. Life as such, not just in its material this and that expressions, but the whole of life, a holistic perspective, an all encompassing, deep, and profound understanding of the universe. And in that journey of discovery, we can develop an adventurous spirit, an attitude of discovery, cultivating curiosity, zooming in, taking a closer look, and checking it out. So, this is what we will do in today's Spirit of Yoga podcast, another special episode where we connect to the roots of yoga, discovering the origins of this Indian wisdom tradition. And we will, on the one hand, look at the ancient roots and all the original sources where this yogic wisdom is coming from. But on the other hand, we take it also very practical, hands-on applied yogic wisdom, which I call the living tradition. So we bring this wisdom to life. We actualize it. We bring this ancient knowledge into the application in modern times. We discover the usage case, meaning how does it apply to me as a woman living in the Western world, having this and that challenge? What can I benefit from this ancient wisdom? How can I relate to it? And how can I apply it in my daily life? So, philosophy, in my understanding, is an active process of making wisdom meaningful, useful, applied, practical philosophy. And remember, philosophia, love of wisdom. These are the ancient Greek two terms of philosophy. Philo, the love; Sophia, wisdom. Philosophia. So, not as a dry armchair philosophy, not just some smartass people sitting in their rocking chair, excuse my language, not just this kind of theorizing, intellectualizing, overthinking, this type of dry intellectual philosophy, theory. No, as mentioned, practical, applied wisdom. It needs to be tangible, meaningful, and on a basic level, even useful in my life circumstances. Otherwise, personally, I'm only partially interested. Some part in myself is also interested in the intellectual curiosity. I studied philosophy in university and I went deep down this theory rabbit hole. I like it, but it's not my primary interest. It's an interest of my intellectually inclined mind. But what I'm really longing for is this heartfelt wisdom, making it applicable in my daily life challenges. Noticing how I have a general understanding and some basic skills after trying it for years and decades, but noticing how I'm still regularly failing, not managing to make the wise choice, still going in the same trap. The 27th time this year already. And it's kind of like, still I didn't get the point. But at least I try to have the sincerity and integrity to acknowledge that I screwed up again. Because I know better. I've tried also sometimes successfully. And I learned from the lessons that other human beings have been trying not only for months and years, but for decades, for generations, for centuries and millennia. Human beings have been aspiring to go deeper, not get stuck on the surface, not just do the superficial small talk socializing thing, but pierce through the surface and get to the bottom of it. Discover the root. And in these psychological circumstances of communication and relation, where we regularly screw up, this can mean to get to the root of the problem. What's the core issue here? What's the source of the issue? Instead of just trying to fix it on the surface, covering up the symptoms, we try to understand the root cause of the problem. And what we find there is some of the fundamental drives, like attraction and repulsion, which expresses as aversion. I don't like. I hate this. So, understanding these principles, which are almost like physical laws, like magnetism, attraction and repulsion, plus, minus, light, dark, good, bad. So, in the jungle of my emotional salad, I try to get some clarity. I try to see clearly, what are we talking about here? What's this whole debate, discussion, argument even about? Let's not get lost in the details. Let's not try to patch it and cover it up with some symptom treatment on the surface. Let's get to the root of this. What's the original source of the problem we keep on having? Because that's the dynamic in relation. There's like a recurring theme again and again and again. We either knock our head against the wall or we knock it against each other. Struggling, nudging, pushing, complaining, and all the rest of the negatively charged thoughts, the emotionally charged thoughts, fueled by this fundamental negativity, this contraction, this constriction, this tightness which we tend to carry, which Eckhart Tolle, famous modern spiritual master, Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body, which can get triggered. And then it comes in the foreground and it's like screaming for attention. It's an old pain, an old wound. It's a sore spot. And not like somebody putting their finger on my sore spot, poking in that old wound. Some scar tissue there. Still very sensitive. Metaphorically speaking, it's like somebody stepping on my toes, which were broken last week or last decade, and I still didn't recover for it. I'm still traumatized from what went wrong 27 years ago. and somebody steps on my toes, my sore spot, presses my button. If you think you're free of it, if you think you're all liberated and spiritually advanced being, following the famous quote by the legendary Ram Dass, if you think you're all enlightened, go home and spend a week with your family and see how detached you are. Show me. Because definitely, especially these family members, they are very good in pressing our buttons. They know our sore spots. And kind of almost on purpose, they step on our toes. Come on. I told you 27 years ago already that I don't like it. And still, hitting the head against the wall / hitting our head against each other, clashing again. Different interest groups in the family or in society, where it expresses in the more collective sphere. Everybody knows that's how it goes. The old stories and worries. Here we go again. And again. When will it end, my friend? When we manage to take a deep breath and pause for a moment. Instead of being in this instant reactivity, we choose to pause for a moment, step back, and then come with a wise response. So that's the ideal scenario. But usually, the setting is somebody steps on my toes, I get provoked because it's my sore spot, somebody presses my buttons, and it's like an instant reactivity. I freak out. I flip. It turns me upside down. Or it makes me sick to the stomach. It turns my stomach upside down. I just kind of want to puke and vomit. It's just like, oh my God. Another deadline by my boss. And then the devastating impact it has can turn into frustration, into anger. And then suddenly we catch ourselves with some violent fantasies against whatever, the deadline boss and the pressure cooker of our work environment, which can be devastating. And then in some ways the anger is functional. In society, the circumstances can be so suppressive, so much exploitation, so much injustice. And for good reason, people get frustrated with that and are fed up with it. We can empathize. No more. So there's a function in this anger. This amplified frustration serves a purpose. It's like a means to change. It fuels the impetus, the momentum to ignite change. Because sometimes this change needs to be like, bam, cut it out. So there's a momentum in this revolution spirit of turning things around. So that can be important. And the people stand up as a collective or individually in a relationship. One stands up, setting one's boundaries, but maybe even more, putting a foot on the ground. Enough is enough of the exploitation, suppression. So there is a role and function in that. Yet there's also a catch to this anger, obviously. Because the danger is that this instant reactivity, this frustrated freaking out, I'm flipping, this reactivity has also consequences, has a negative impact. Because it is, in a way, a hitting back. Somebody steps on my toes, then I step on their toes. And then the problem is that we then amplify and increase the intensity of that. And then the emotional charge brings the conflict to escalation. Scale and escalator. It's going up. It escalates. Too much. And then it's kind of like soon we're using weapons against each other. And we see that in the collective of countries, nations, tribes, people who've been fighting against each other for centuries and millennia for resources like oil, water. Don't underestimate the conflicts about drinking water, territory. My religion is better than your religion. Let me beat it into you. I'm a missionary. Otherwise, you will go to hell. Let me protect you from your blasphemic bad religion. Gazillions of people were killed in the name of religions. No more of that. When will it end, my friend? Can we find a peaceful resolution? Because the catch is that if we go into this reactivity, it's like almost like a spiral of violence, spinning up, amplifying. And that has dire negative consequences. Devastating. It's no child's play. It can get quite serious. It can get a matter of life and death. Literally speaking, or at least metaphorically, like with a deadline. And in other areas, like the cancel culture, you're canceled. You basically lose human rights. You lost your dignity. You're not one of us anymore. You're an outcast. So the impact of this bullying culture can be quite detrimental. So we're speaking about real life consequences and definitely emotional implications in the relational dynamic of the collective. So the tendency is that it's somebody steps on my toes and I would have the impulse, the impulsive reactivity would be to hit back. Traditionally, classically, in ancient times, this has been called an eye for an eye. And this is still going on, both in individual small-scale relationships and in nation relationships and wars and border conflicts and so on. You did this, I also have to do this. Kind of reciprocal. And then kind of like it's fair in the sense of I have good reasons to be angry. And yes, true, we can empathize, as mentioned. Yet this hitting back amplifies the trouble, the conflict, the escalating spiral of violence, either physical in the war or verbal violence, emotionally charged thoughts in the relation. Same principles. The underlying pattern is very similar. And then it doesn't turn out very well usually. Check out this profound quote from the wisdom tradition. An eye for an eye, hitting back. An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. And then unfortunately we continue to try to solve the problems in our rage, try to tell others how we're going to solve the problem. We need to fight together, hit back. And then it becomes like the blind leading the blind. And it can get pretty dark. When will it end, my friend? Because on a third level, it's not just the society, it's not just the individual conflicts in my family work, but these conflicts continue within ourselves. The inner psychological battle, the inner voices, the little devil, little angel on my shoulders telling me this or that, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So different personality tendencies, different drives and inclinations in myself fuel that. And then, in a way, the conflict I have going on in my own mind is just externalized in the words of my communication. And those are then reflected in the actions, interactions. And then many of those people together form the collective, the society, the other country. And then we don't see the connection. But as Shivananda was pointing out that connection very clearly, wonderful quote, your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits become your personality. Your personality is your destiny, is where we're going in life. From thoughts to words to actions to habits to personality to destiny. So the invitation is to see this connection. Coming back to the opening where I was referring to the helpful clarity, the lucid, eye-opening wisdom which comes from the ancient wisdom traditions. If we would receive these gifts, if for a moment we would see clearly, we have at least a chance to choose differently. We might still go in the same trap, but at least we take a moment to reflect, see the bigger picture, consider the recommendations of those people who've been there and done that, who made similar mistakes in similar challenges a few years or centuries ago, or even a few millennia ago. One of the source scriptures of the Indian wisdom tradition is the Bhagavad Gita, sometimes called the Bible of the Hindus. It's not really, but the Bhagavad Gita is a short part of an extremely long epic mythological story called the Mahabharata, the great story of the Bharata dynasty, more than 2,500 years old. And what is that story describing? It's the conflict between the good guys and the bad guys. Two groups of the family clan, royal kingdom stories, where it's one group of brothers, relatives, and another one. The good guys, the friends of the light, and the bad guys, the dark forces. One of their leaders is the blind king. Remember, leaves the world blind. the dark forces. So then it's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of this story of the Mahabharata, telling a story of a war which then culminates, a conflict which culminates in a war in this Bhagavad Gita. And the message that the translators and interpreters in the modern times are giving us, if we want to understand this ancient story, we need to see that it's actually not so much about a physical war that happened historically somewhere, but that it is a description of the war inside of our psychology. In our mind, there's a conflict going on, and there's different voices. The little angel, little devil, the good guys and the bad guys, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as mentioned. The uplifting, positive energy, the light forces, and the dark tendencies. And we are somehow torn between those two tendencies. And sometimes we don't even know what to do anymore, what to think anymore. And then, of course, we get even more confused by the surrounding opinions. So many different voices and media and the Democrats and the Republicans and the this and the that and the this new trend and fashion and so many tips, tricks, recommendations, how to, what not to. So it's like a cacophony of 1,000 voices around, but also inside of me. It reverberates, it continues. My own mind is kind of drives me crazy. It's almost a schizophrenic scenario within our own minds. How to get out of what Rumi calls, famous Persian mystic poet, Rumi calls it this prison for drunks. I forgot if it's Rumi or Hafez who said something like, for no reason, for no peculiar reason, I don't know why, for no reason, 1,000 birds chose my head for a conference table and start passing their cups of wine and chitter-chatting, twittering these birds, tweeting. 1,000 birds chose my head for a conference table. Rumi knew it centuries ago. This phenomenon of this noisy mind, all these contradicting thoughts and incoherent voices. For no reason, he says. I don't know why. I don't know how to stop this crazy mind. But Rumi actually knew how to get out of the mind into the heart, because he was a master of living with an open heart. So we can learn from a mystical poet like Rumi and get inspired by a master like that. Tap into this field and sense the divine love that he's speaking about. These love poems of the Sufis are actually not romantic partner stories, but it's about the love for the divine, for the absolute supreme. Call it by whichever name you wish. Love for the universe, love for life. So we can get inspired. And my invitation would be a poet yourself. Become a mystical being and embody this wisdom. Don't just read a poem, but embody the poem. Feel it. And for that, we need to get out of our minds and be more present, sensitive, available in the sphere of the heart. But how to do it? The yogic wisdom tradition and other spiritual traditions around the globe have a lot of recommendations about that. And can you believe it? Even our cameraman here, if I could turn around the camera now, you would see, literally, right now, in this moment, He's sitting down, sitting cross-legged, because he's also a spiritual seeker. He's a young gentleman here from Indonesia. And our second cameraman here, the same. He has the Om tattooed on his arm here. And I remember sometimes when we, in our yoga classes, record the final relaxation meditation, he would also be sitting cross-legged meditating. So here in Indonesia, in the Balinese yoga capital Ubud, this spiritual wisdom is still more direct and alive. People are connected more directly. One of our support team members here from Bali, before she sends out an email, before she presses the send button, she speaks a little mantra, a sacred blessing, a little prayer, a little wish that it will arrive well, that it will connect from heart to heart. Ellen is her name, and she's just sitting on the other side of the wall in our support team there. So these people care. They tap into this field of their culture, of their wisdom tradition. And for them, it's a living tradition. For them, the tradition is nothing boring, outdated, old-fashioned, conservative, boring, dusty, irrelevant. In many Asian cultures, here in Bali, Indonesia, in Thailand, where I was living for a decade, where Buddhism is so prevalent, where the guy who was doing the photocopies of our yoga teacher training manual, the book, he would say, like, no, next week I cannot do copies. I'm in the monastery. I'm doing a silent meditation retreat, mindfulness practices. In Thailand, this is very common. In India, anyhow. Just come back from the world yoga capital Rishikesh, where we offer the meditation teacher training there, where meditation is in the air. It's so strong, the energetic charge, because it's cultivated, it's upheld, it's continued. The living tradition, this living wisdom, this applied practical philosophy, where we learn in the community, what we call in Asia the Sangha, the community of spiritual seekers, and hopefully we become finders, as it's called in Buddhism, the Buddha Dharma Sangha. The Sangha, the spiritual community. The Buddha is actually the Buddhas, the awakened ones, the seekers of the Sangha who became finders. So the Sangha hopefully becomes the Buddha. And together we cultivate the Dharma, the spiritual wisdom, the principles of the art of living. The Buddha Dharma Sangha. In Bali, we're in the middle of it, of a celebration called Galungan. It's more than a week long, from Galungan to Kuningan Day, where it's the theme of the good forces overcoming the dark forces. The Dharma is in victory over the adharma. A means not, the not dharma. The fake, the false, the frauds, the hoax, the lies, the darkness is losing over the light, the clarity, the principles of dharma. Or as it's called in Buddhism, Dhamma. Same. Dhamma winning over adharma. That's the Galungan Kuningan festival happening right now here in Bali. And what they do, surprisingly, on that period of celebration, of ceremony, they honor the ancestors. They have a very deep connection to their ancestral roots here. And that's literally the relatives who passed away a few months, years, decades ago. They are considered to be still kind of part of the crew, part of the circle. They're still around. And also they should be kept content to not upset the ancestors. So they are included because generally in ancient societies and more alive in, for example, Asia, is the honoring of the elders, not the old folks being parked and abandoned in a senior citizen home and kind of locked away there, basically dysfunctional for modern society, cannot even use an iPhone, grandma. You're kind of out of it. Even though it's not true, my 85-year-old mother uses her phone very eloquently. She was struggling with a PC, but the phone she manages. She introduced me to fancy features of WhatsApp, which I didn't even know about. But still, the old folks are not really regarded so well in society in modern times. But different in Asia. The elders are cherished, almost venerated. Because there's a certain wisdom which comes with old age. These people have been living their life for years and decades. And in an aligned manner, they can say with integrity, I've been there and I've done that. Honey, not just 7 times. I've been playing this game for 70 years. Listen, darling, says Grandma before she leans back into her rocking chair. Because the young generation was too busy to listen, was too involved with the latest fashion trends. While Grandma says, I don't need to run after every ball anymore. I've seen it all. My mother, for example, she's born in 1940 in Germany. That means in the middle of the Second World War. That's a pretty tough place to be born. End of Second World War. That were her first 5 years of life. And the first years after the war were not nice either. She comes with a different mentality onto this planet. She had a different introduction to life. And as many of you know, the early childhood is so influential. We get hardwired in these first years. Well, would give me some compassion for her, why she is like this or like that, instead of just pointing fingers, blaming, and like, oh, you're so old-fashioned, or come on, have some respect for the elders. That's the invitation. And even in an almost selfish way, let me learn something from those people who've tried and failed. Can I maybe learn some of their lessons and get a shortcut? How can I benefit from these lessons that they learned? And can you give me the TLDR? What's that? Too long, did not read. I didn't read the whole book. I don't have time for that. But please, Grandma, give me the summary. What's the takeaway message? Come on, the bottom line. Have a bit of patience, darling. Let me tell you the story. No, I gotta go. Bye. And then we miss out because we keep too busy running away, frequently running in circles, hamster wheel. sometimes even vicious circles, digging ourselves in a downward spiral. Because we don't listen to the advice, to the tips and tricks of those who've been there and done that, who know the way out of the labyrinth, of the maze. Grandma told us, no, second junction, turn left. But I want to do it my way. My way or the highway. I choose. You go your way, I do my way. And then we don't want to listen. And that's fair enough. I was very much like this as a teenager, hardcore, rebelling against all the establishment and on the barricades against the conservative. Very much. And there's a time and a role for that, because it's not only the good old days. Many things went wrong in the past. I was mentioning Second World War. So, yes, but let's learn the lessons from it. Without history, we're basically lost. We're doomed to repeat the same mistakes of humanity over and over again. So again, I hope you can see that history is nothing boring and outdated, old-fashioned, conservative, dusty, irrelevant. Not at all. And we're not doing here high school history, trying to memorize the starting date of some world war in the medieval times, something, whatever. It's not the point. We're talking about philosophia, love of wisdom. I would like to connect to the art of living and learn the best of the best from the past and benefit from this insight which others developed, not only over years and decades, but here comes the point, over generations. It's been passed on, handed down, in a way, passed forward from one generation to the next. The old wise master, before she passed, she left some best of the best recommendations. We call it crème de la crème, the cream of the cream, the best of the best, the top, the bottom line, what remains in the end. The excerpts. It's kind of picking only, it's a bit like cherry picking, but in the good sense. Only the best stuff. Do you know, in a watermelon, it's the very center of the watermelon, the heart of it is the sweetest. Grandma knows. She knows how to hit the watermelon, to hear the sound if it's a ripe and tasty one. That's a down to earth, practical fruit shopping knowledge. But there's more. How to cultivate a relationship. I remember hearing in my 20s an old elderly person saying, after something like, I forgot, 65 years of relationship, trying to pass on one of the principles they learned in their relationship. I remember the recommendation was, don't go to sleep, don't fall asleep, don't go to bed without having communicated from heart to heart, kind of cleared the conversation, at least on a basic level. Don't sleep before that. There was like a takeaway message after 65 years of not maybe only successful relationship, but of lived experience. That served me very well over the last decades. I might have a thing or two to learn from these things. So that has been my mission over the last almost 3 decades. Some 27 years I'm on it, to research the art of living, to investigate what is called the perennial philosophy. Philosophy, we already said, love of wisdom, philosophia. Perennial means eternal. The timeless wisdom. the ageless truth. The same topics, themes, patterns have been mentioned in spiritual traditions across the centuries and across the millennia. Again and again and again and again and again and again and again, the same insights. Some have listened, and it saved their day. Others go about their way and continue with an eye for an eye. Blindly. The blind leading the blind, still lost. So that's the invitation. To connect to this timeless wisdom, which is still around, it's still alive. That's why I call it the living tradition. It's nothing boring, outdated. Same as this plant here next to me. Here in the tropical context, but also in Scandinavia in the north, around the planet, we find these special plants known as ferns. The fern plants are a bit like some of the insects which have been around forever. The species, the type of creature, has been around not for centuries, not for millennia, not for hundreds of thousands of years, not for millions of years, but for hundreds of millions of years. These fern plants have been around. A lot of the surface of this planet was covered 300 million years ago with fern. Similar creatures to this one, fern trees. Very similar leaf structure, if not identical. Nature has been here on this planet and done this biology, biosphere job for hundreds of millions of years. Fun fact, some geologists with decent evidence claim that our oil and coal reserves that we are now burning with petrol and all the rest of it, the oil and coal is actually compressed fern forests in part. So learn from nature, its agility, adaptability, how to adjust to the different seasons of life, and get inspired by this living tradition of life, of humanity, of the entire universe. Read those ancient wisdom scriptures. Check out the Heart Sutra by Gautama Buddha. Choose an excellent translation and a helpful commentary with an explanation. But connect to the original, not a second-hand, 20-second-hand opinion by somebody commenting on somebody's comments. You want to check out the real deal? Go to the sources. And remember that the source is not just in these ancient wisdom books and scriptures, but a spark of wisdom is inside of ourselves. One of the most influential Buddhist masters of the last century, Ajahn Chah, forest tradition of the Thai Buddhism, Theravada. Ajahn Chah has a wonderful, straightforward, simple statement for you. Only one book is worth reading: the heart. So I invite you to look deeper, to explore the depth of your own being, and to practice, for example, a spiritual heart meditation, where you can cultivate the new habit of allowing the mind to sink down into the heart. And rest in the heart. And then see the world through the eyes of the heart. Connect from heart to heart. Learn to live with an open heart. So give that a try. In the description text, we'll put the link to a free meditation challenge, as we call it in modern times. Give it a try. Observe your breath flowing in heart center. And experience firsthand the wisdom in motion. And allow yourself to be guided by the masters on whose shoulders we stand. They uplift you so you can rise up and shine brightly and live with an open heart. This was the Spirit of Yoga podcast. Thank you so much for staying all the way till the end. Love you all so much, and sending blessings from the cultural capital of Bali. All the best from Ubud. Keep on shining. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch. Namaste.